Joining us now is U.S. Senator Ron Wyden, and this weekend he's hosting a series of town hall meetings. And thank you so much for joining us, Senator.
Thank you.
So please tell us a little bit about your efforts here with the cybersecurity.
This is a particularly important issue for Southern Oregon, and it really relates to the balance between creating good jobs, because the tech jobs, according to state officials, do pay better, and of course trying to make sure that we're prepared to deal with North Korea and others who might try to hack into our companies and our institutions. Now, I wrote the Internet Tax Freedom Bill, and we actually got it reauthorized again. And it's hard to prove a negative, but I'm convinced that this bill has saved Oregon's small businesses millions of dollars on what could have been discriminatory taxes on electronic commerce. You've got companies, for example, like Fire Mountain Gem here in Southern Oregon that depend greatly on ensuring that there is a fair taxation regime. And my law, plus making sure that we don't force companies like Fire Mountain Gem to become tax collectors for thousands of jurisdictions around the country, is very important to the Southern Oregon economy.
And speaking of taxes, I hear you have some plans for tax reform for Americans.
I've written the only bipartisan federal income tax reform bill in a quarter century. And again, there's some real priorities for Southern Oregon. For example, I favor taking away the tax break for shipping jobs overseas. If someone, for example, in the Midwest or the South were to close their company, they in effect get tax breaks for doing that. They get tax breaks for setting up shop overseas. What I do in my bipartisan federal income tax reform bill is take away those breaks and use those very same dollars to reduce the rates for small businesses and others in communities like Southern Oregon all across the country. Small business will really benefit from my tax reform bill because it creates incentives for what I call red, white, and blue jobs, rather than jobs that, in effect, you give tax breaks to take them out of the country.
Mm-hmm. And we know here in Southern Oregon there are a lot of mom and pop shops, family-owned companies, and the impact for them with this law here.
Well, it's hugely important, and there are a whole host of issues that will impact small businesses in Southern Oregon. About 1 out of 5 jobs, for example, depends on international trade. Again, the export jobs in international trade pay better. So part of what I'll be talking about during these meetings is let's do more to grow things here, to make things here, to add value to them here, and then ship them somewhere. And my top priority is tougher enforcement of the trade laws. You see, again, the Chinese hacking into some of our solar and renewable energy operations. So those kinds of issues, and I call them really the T's, you know, technology and tax reform, and transportation would be a third. Those all go to the heart of how we produce more high-skill, high-wage jobs in Southern Oregon and in our state.
I see. And then going from small businesses to the rural communities, and especially those that depend on subsidies such as timber payments. Recently, you praised a $22 million funding for conservation efforts. Please tell us about that.
Well, of course, we in Oregon understand that we need good-paying jobs, and that's why I've introduced legislation that is particularly important to Southern Oregon counties, because it would double the harvest each year for decades to come in a sustainable way. And we know we need to protect our treasures, and I pushed very hard for protection of the Oregon caves, something very important in this part of our state, and I think that's going to help again to make sure that our treasures are an economic engine as well. You know, every time you talk about preserving rivers and our wonderful environmental treasures, people come up and say, look, I run a fishing business, and we have people come in, they spend money at hotels and restaurants and gas, and they buy equipment and the like. So Oregon's wonderful outdoors is also a big economic engine, and so as I pursue the timber legislation to get the harvest up in a sustainable way, I also want to take steps to protect our treasures.
Okay. And during these town hall meetings, are there any particular points that you'd really like to make clear and strong for the people that are coming?
Well, I'm here to listen. You know, I don't come in with a big speech. Southern Oregon has a very rapidly growing older population. I'm going to talk about Medicare, particularly the great changes in the program to deal with chronic disease. You know, Medicare used to be mostly about broken ankles, and if somebody broke their ankle, wasn't too bad a break, they went to the doctor's office. More serious break, they might go to one of our hospitals. Today, that's not Medicare. Today, Medicare is about cancer and diabetes and heart disease and strokes, and I have built a bipartisan piece of legislation that ensures that we protect the Medicare guarantee. The Medicare guarantee for seniors ensures that those benefits cannot be meddled with, and I believe with our bill we found a way to protect the Medicare guarantee and be more efficient.
Okay. And one last question. Going into these town hall meetings, do you have any expectations or anything that you're anticipating?
Well, I anticipate that a lot of the discussion will focus on the economy, the issues that we're talking about, like technology and tax reform. Transportation, I'm sure, will come up. You cannot have a big league economy with a little league transportation system. And what it really comes down to, in a sentence, is 2015 has got to be about finding jobs that pay good wages for working families. That's my top priority for 2015.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us,
Let's do it
Senator.
again. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Best of luck on these town hall meetings. Thank you.